talk grind, we talk gold. Street hustle, rhythm control. Ideas cooking flame on high. No shortcuts, just do or die. 86 opinions, both precision, no permission. We build a vision, we rise, we move, we own this lane. 86 opinions, remember the name. Real talk, no filters needed. If it's raw truth, we feed it.
Welcome back to a episode of 86 Opinions, where your opinion is not part of the recipe. We are here today with Jason Davis from Plate It Up, who has an extensive background within the restaurant industry. He started out as a chef. His journey has taken him into restaurant supply chains across the entire nation. He's pretty much seen or been around different types of restaurants, different types of food establishments for the past 21 plus years. We're privileged to have you here today, Jason, and we'd love to chop it up with you, man. So how's everything going? And give us some insight to what you see in the restaurant industry right now, my man.
Yeah, brother, I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you so much. Kind of cool experience to get on here and chat up the business with you, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, the business has kind of defined who I am, if you will. My family, my wife and I were an old cliche. She was a server at my restaurant. I was told not to mingle. I mingled, and here I am with her, 2 decades later, right? And, it's had its ups and downs, but, for me, it was being able to take the passion I have for food and stay within that industry is what really kind of translated me into getting to go work in food service distribution.
Awesome, man. So when you started as a chef, what was your specialty? What did you like to cook? What was your thing? I watch your content, man, and I know you cook everything under the sun, and you've just got amazing quality of food. So what's your passion in the food?
To be honest with you, I love the Hispanic flair.
Sure.
I worked in a couple different Hispanic restaurants across DC and Baltimore. Unfortunately, over the years, time goes, they're no longer in business, but for me, I love the simplicity of Hispanic food as it pertains to so many different spices and seasons, create so many different variations of the same dish. They're all pretty staple in terms of the proteins and the spices, and whether or not it's, extra spicy, it's just a tweak of this ingredient or that ingredient. And there's something about the elegance of taking a simplistic style of cooking and adding a couple extra things to make it so special. And that's what I really enjoy about the Hispanic cuisine.
Yeah, and you see a lot of Hispanic cuisine. There's a lot of fusion with that. I
For
don't
sure.
want to say easy. I don't want to make it sound easy, but
No, no whatsoever.
it's a very eclectic food that you can fusion a lot of different cultures in with the Hispanic culture, right? And I think that's one of my biggest draws to it is I love seeing the restaurants that do that fusion and that flair. So when you got out of kind of the chef life and you kind of transition, I know you keep the chef life going as like a hobby. Let's talk about your restaurant supply chain experience, because you've got an extensive background in that. And I think it's really important that a lot of restaurant owners just kind of hear from your angle and perspective what you see on a daily basis. And
For me, like I'd mentioned earlier, the passion is something that for the food industry in itself, I wanted to kind of leave a mark, and I wanted to be able to say I contributed something to this business that has contributed to me. And, growing up in the 70s and 80s, you had the very similar style of content of food. There wasn't anybody that was really outbreaking. And, you had some, especially where I grew up anyway. And so a lot of national contracted type of concepts were all over the place, whether or not it was your big box stores or your multi-unit locations and places like that, if I wanted a good, consistent burger, I'd go to this place. And so for me, when the opportunity approached, I had a close friend of mine that was actually my Cisco salesperson at the time. I was working for a pretty high-end country club as the executive chef. And, if you wanted to have that 500-person wedding, you came to me. And I missed every holiday. Doug, I missed Valentine's Day, forget taking off on Thanksgiving because I'm feeding 1,000 people. And it really wore on my family. It wore on me. It wore on my marriage. And, I had to make a decision between something that I dedicated my life to and somebody over here that would become my person. Right. And
absolutely.
The opportunity showed itself. I talked with the people at Cisco. They brought me on. And truth be told, I put my resignation in from that job within 6 months, because I was so used to that steady routine, that brick and mortar, going in. I traded in my chef pants and my knives for an IBM and a pair of loafers, right? And it was, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And But then I really kind of took a step back and I analyzed what the potential, what it could do for me, the impact I could potentially have if I really did it right. And it has led me into working with some really cool people, tasting some fantastic food almost every single week, seeing some really good operators and taking some of the pieces that they do and how do I help somebody down the road that is struggling with it. And whether or not it's been selling outside of Baltimore and DC, out to LA, Santa Monica, going from Venice Beach down to Malibu, out to Hollywood and Arizona. It's been a really blessing of an opportunity to do what I do because I stay in the industry that's given me back so much.
Absolutely. I love that. And what was the biggest mindset shift when you went from the kitchen to the supplied world? What was that mindset shift like? What was a perspective change for you?
As a It's funny because the mindset shift didn't really shift, if you will. It just the focus came more about helping a restaurant succeed over here versus me having an impact on a plate that you put in front of you to taste.
Hmm.
The attention to detail was still there because I mean, food service, restaurant food service runs 100 miles an hour. And I don't care who you are, if they tell you different, they're lying to you, right?
I don't think there's anything in the restaurant industry that doesn't run 100 miles an hour, is there?
Just even your days off go 100 miles an hour before you know it,
Yeah.
you're back in the restaurant, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's not very many days off.
No, for me, the mind shift was really thinking more globally, if you will,
Okay.
more trend based versus the individual service coming up or the integrity of the menu and the cuisine that I have on it. And it became about using my resources a lot more. And I think that was the big shift for me. You know, I grew up in the world of, the chefs were like, this is how I do it my way. Right. And I kind of took a lot of that mentality into my roles as an executive chef and leading people. And the thing that I learned when I get into food service, if you try that way, food service sales, distribution, if you try it that way, you're going to fail.
Hmm.
And, you got an army behind you, you're just the conduit to expose it. And for me, it was really leaning on the people around me to help me help the customer, if you will, right? The restaurant.
Awesome. Yeah. And there's there's a lot of use the word trends, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
trends that kind of ebb and flow within the restaurant world. And I know you see that as a social media creator yourself with your food stuff
Sure.
now. So what are it's no doubt about it that the restaurant industry is struggling right now, and we can point fingers and blame it on a million different things if we want to, or we can take a step back and say what's working, right? So what are the trends that you see currently within the restaurant world that you think are a positive for the restaurants right now?
I think the thing that I really enjoy about the current, state of mind, if you will, or the current world of the hospitality world, the way it is now is there's so many different tools and resources as a chef that you can use to keep your stuff fresh, right? As I said, growing up in the kitchen world in the 80s and the 90s, we didn't have the tech that's available now, right? You didn't have even the basic fundamental tools that come with standard with almost every kitchen now, right? There was no rationale ovens. There was a put it on the oven and hope to God that you don't run out of water in your boiling pot, right? And for what we do now, the tools and being able to have access to whether or not it's the social media platforms or whether or not it's the idea of using resources like chat gpt, if I'm running blank on a recipe, right, just throwing something there, hey, here's some ingredients that I have, help me build out a recipe. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes the
Sure.
recipes are fantastic and sometimes they straight up flop, but that's no different than the other days, right? It's just now I have that extra engine behind me to help me push it. For me, what I've seen in this business is a lot of people gravitating to social media to really build trends around what their restaurants are going to do, right? And then vice versa, right? I mean, look at the smash burger trend. Good Lord, it's everywhere. All right.
Burrito tacos, smash burgers. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the most successful places that I've seen, and they popped up overnight. It was this place up in outside of where I live in Jersey. They just do smash burgers. They've got 4 burgers on their menu. They assumed a old mom and pop car dealership. Remember those old mom and pop car dealerships that
Yeah.
had that little single
Yeah.
wide that wasn't even a full single wide, and it was the
Yeah.
sales office. It was everything.
Big
They
front
assumed that.
window.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they assumed that, but they made it a drive through. So you start on your left and you run all the way around. And then they started doing DoorDash, and I'm telling you, you can't get in. And they started out by throwing a couple smash burgers out there. People were like, "Oh, you guys do fantastic. Let's go." Now they've got 3 locations, and they hopped on that trend pretty well. And now their biggest challenge is how to keep it fresh,
Yep.
right? Those 4 smash burgers are only going to take you so far, unless that's one really, really good smash burger, right?
Sure.
And so what are they using, and what tools and resources are they using to keep themselves fresh is going to be their biggest challenge.
And simplicity goes a long way in the restaurant industry today, I think, right?
Yeah.
Niching down. We talk about in so many industries, we have to niche down. And I feel like the days of walking into a restaurant and having that 7 or 8 page menu that you flip through, that's almost a revenue killer to restaurants these days. Was that something that you would agree with, you think?
It's not almost a revenue killer, it is.
Mhm.
Unless you're really good at cross utilizing the product that you have and you're walking on your shelves, that big menu carries a lot of inventory in your back kitchens, right?
Sure.
And typically, unless you just are turning your restaurant over 5, 6 times a day and you're constantly refreshing that with, every other day orders or daily orders, the waste that's going to go out that back door is going to be pretty significant. Some of the best operators that I've had, they analyze their menus on a quarterly basis, sometimes half a year. No, I don't think you need to go any more than that, because if you think about it, a quarter is only 13 weeks, right? It's 90 days if you think about it. You're not going to get a real understanding of what a new item can do on your menu any real less than that, right? So the ones that really analyze their stars and their dead dogs, and they make appropriate changes where need to, and they minimize their inventory, and they do a lot of cross utilization of ingredients across their menu, those are the ones that I've seen the most successful. The ones that have a hard time keeping up with their P&L, and you can just tell because the way in which they buy product, or the way in which the food comes out, their attention to detail isn't there, is because they've got too much to manage, right? Or the other piece, they also don't have the right help in the kitchen to be able to help them do that. Right. I think for me, there's 2 pillars of what really defines a good restaurant. Number 1, food. No one's going to come to your restaurant if your food is awful.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
I'm not saying it needs to be great, but if it's not even close to what I would serve my grandmother, then I'm probably not going to go there. Right.
Absolutely.
The other is people. Right. If I'm greeted by the door and the person I greet just kind of snubs me and says, "Oh, go grab a seat," what's the likelihood that I'm going to feel welcome in that space? And so if you look at what really drives a restaurant, in my opinion, and what I've seen, is food number 1 and the people behind it number 2. And I think if a restaurant can focus on anything, in my opinion, those are the 2 things you focus on.
And I think you nailed it with that right there, because I firmly believe that a restaurant that has mediocre food, I mean, mediocre by meaning good standards, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's good food, but great service and great people will outdo a restaurant that has absolutely amazing food and no atmospheric vibe whatsoever. I truly believe that.
And I wholeheartedly agree with you. If I look at it from a standpoint, that food could be absolutely killer. But if I feel like I'm, a burden to the server, I'm constantly having to do something to get someone's attention to just get service, to me, that is not an enjoyable experience, right?
Sure.
I'm not asking to be weighted on head and toe, attention to every little nook and cranny of a detail, but
Sure.
understand the fact that I am there, I am paying for my food, I am contributing to your bottom line. Give me a little bit of what I would feel as attention. You know what I mean?
Yep. And especially in today's world, I mean, we live such busy lives now. It's no doubt that even not going to a restaurant, we feel the cost of goods rising when we go to the grocery store. So if I'm going to pull money out of my pocketbook to go out and support your business, especially for people who are great at cooking, I'm really paying much more for that experience than I am the overall food, right? I want good food, but it's that different experience than just sitting at home and cooking. And I think that's something that is kind of a hit and miss in the restaurant world right now. And I look at a lot of things from the marketing standpoint. Obviously, we build marketing systems for restaurants to keep in-house. But what do you see as something that restaurant owners kind of don't catch up on or don't pick up on sometimes until it's too late?
There's personal opinions of food, right? So, I'm in Jersey. There's a very big emphasis on Italian, right? There's a big emphasis on, standardized American food. Diners are big here. You have to adopt what your market can handle, right? You have to adopt what your market wants and needs. So I think I shared a ranch dressing story with you,
Yeah, you
right?
did. You did. You
Kind of
did.
quick synopsis, right? I won't name any names or any places, but I worked with a restaurant, and it was a killer restaurant. It came out the gate strong. I mean, lines out the door every single day. It didn't matter if it was lunch, didn't matter if it was dinner. I mean, they would go on a weekend, they would go on a 2 hour waiting list at 4 o'clock, right? And it was
Good
just
problems. Good
stupid,
problems.
stupid. I mean, good problems to have,
Good
stupid
problems.
business. Except they had one problem. Half their menu was of a lighter fare cuisine, right? It was, a little bit of tapas. You had, salads. You had stuff that was literally one page of the menu was greens and healthier eats. And then the other side was more entrees and, handhelds and things like that. Except they didn't have one thing. They didn't have ranch dressing on their menu. And they didn't have ranch dressing because the ownership did not like ranch dressing.
Yeah. But
It went, it,
their menu is everything that as a consumer people just douse in
mhm.
ranch dressing, right?
Right. So then after the first like 90 days, they did an evaluation of their menu. And, we helped them at the time I was working for Cisco. We helped them with, bringing in some of our inside specialist team to really kind of help them along with the process because we were experienced in doing that stuff. And, we evaluated that their salads, the whole half side of the menu on the left side was their dead dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't understand why. And we kind of exposed the fact that they're letting their own personal opinions of food and what their preferences are dictate whether or not it's going to drive foot traffic in the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all for your own personal take. We all cook with our own personal take of how we do things.
For sure.
But my wife is not a blue cheese fan. But if I open up a wing joint, you best believe I'm gonna have blue cheese dressing.
Amen. Yeah, you have to.
Right? Yeah. Just because she doesn't like blue cheese dressing doesn't mean that I'm going to avoid using it as a conduit to make money in my restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
A lot of restaurants that we see right now with salads and things of that nature, if you're not selling a lot of salads and stuff on your menu, a lot of times that is something that I recommend to owners, like you can cut out immediately, because when you're throwing away fresh vegetables on the weekly basis because people aren't even gravitating towards that menu item, I feel like they just don't see that in time, and they continue to throw food out the back door, right? Because fresh greens go bad quicker. And
it's a bigger Doug, it's a bigger scale than that, right? And I think
sure.
There's the perception of what service is supposed to look like, right? So if you go out to eat, the first thing a server is going to ask you is, what can I get you to drink? Right? My wife's go-to is water with lemon, right? Just to get it started. And then we'll get some cocktails a little bit later. Mine is an iced tea, no lemon.
I'm the same way.
Right?
Not sweet tea, no lemon, just tea.
Now, if I ask for iced tea and I don't specify no lemon, what do you think happens?
They probably put
I
a
get
lemon.
lemon.
Yep.
Where do you think that lemon goes? It goes right in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same way with LTOs on burgers, right? I'm of the mindset, have your server put it in and ask, right? Don't waste that LTO. That could go on somewhere. That could go somewhere else. That, me, I want to taste the burger. I want to taste the bun. I want to taste the sauce. I'm not a big lettuce, tomato, and onion fan on my burger unless it's a unique style of a burger. So if you put it on my plate, you're going to dump that in the trash because I'm not going to use it. So it's those little things that add up over time, right? You think about it from a perspective, the average tomato on a 5x6 tomato, you're getting anywhere from 8 to 10 slices. If you got 8 to 10 people that do that, you might as well just take one tomato out of the box every 8 to 10 burgers and just throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
If you look at it from that perspective, you would never do that.
Sure.
So then why take that standpoint of all my burgers come with a lettuce and tomato onion on the side?
Yep. That's a very unique perspective, and I've never thought about that before, because I think a lot of restaurant owners look at that and say, well, I've already got that in my cost of goods. I've already got my pricing based off of that. I'm not losing money. But in the big scheme of things, you are losing money because you're cutting into the profit of that burger every time it gets thrown away, right?
Right, because you could use it somewhere else.
Sure. And obviously, again, coming from the marketing side of things, I was an operational restaurant, food truck, catering company owner for 8+ years, and then I moved on to the marketing side because that was kind of like you. I saw that opening. I saw that was where my passion took me. So when you go around to all these restaurants and you have these conversations with these owners and you're talking about supplies and what they can do from a marketing standpoint, in your perspective, where are some restaurant owners missing the mark?
Not leveraging where people use to decide where they're going to eat.
Not
And it's
leveraging
this
what people use to decide where they're going
what
to
they
eat.
use, right?
Okay.
It's this little thing that you're watching me on right now, my phone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In today's world, if you're not leveraging social,
Uh-huh.
even if it's a 5 second clip, bam, bam, right? Something, you are missing out on people driving traffic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those that have kids will tell you they go, if they're going out to eat, they go where their kids want to eat,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's easier on the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where do you think most teenagers are seeing food content
Sure.
or restaurant ideas or dishes? They're seeing it on all the social platforms. And I think the ones that I have seen are the ones that are kind of stuck in the idea of this is how I've always done it, right? There is an adapt or die mentality. You either adapt in today's world or it's going to kill you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, that comes from, and I think I mentioned this to you, one of my favorite movies is the movie Warrior, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
a true story about two brothers, long and short of it. They ended up having to fight each other in an MMA competition. And the one had a trainer, and the trainer's words, and it was on his wall, adapt or die, adapt or die, adapt or die. And that mentality can be, so true in so many aspects of your life, my life. But in the restaurant business, it couldn't be any more true. You have to adapt to what's in front of you, or the times are going to pass you by. And I think the ones that I've seen that make it big leverage social, leverage all the tools that are in front of them. The ones that don't will be like, hey, I made a successful business on this back in the 90s. I'm keeping it here.
Yeah.
Right. And, so, my job is to try to educate as best as I can, give guidance as best as I can. In no way, shape, or form am I an expert, right? If I was an expert, I'd have a million restaurants and you'd be on my podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
you
Right.
know no, and I was just going to say, I think, the thing for me is it's why I love this business so much on the food distribution side is no conversation is ever the same. No restaurant ever has the same problem. There may be variations of it, but it's never the identical problem. And
Sure.
so it really kind of keeps me on my toes and makes me have to educate myself to say, hey, I'm being seen as a resource. What am I doing to provide you with the details that you need to be successful?
And we see that what you say about organic social media in those videos and those pictures. I talk with restaurant owners on a daily basis, and one of the first things they tell me is, Facebook advertising just doesn't work. And then, you ask them, well, how are you doing it? Oh, well, I just boost a post and I put $25 behind it. Well, what you've never done is you've never tested that creative to see if that's even going to resonate with people who want to come in and eat your food, right? So
Mm-hmm.
just throwing money out there in hopes that people will resonate with it or going viral. Everybody wants to go viral, but I'm currently in Nevada. You're in Philadelphia, New Jersey area. If I go viral and you see my badass smash burger, what good does that do me? Right? You're not coming to Ely, Nevada to come get my smash burger from Philadelphia.
Unless it's a
Right?
really good burger.
Unless it's a really good burger. Yeah, I've been known to travel for food for sure. But you know, we get so spun up on how many views I get, how many likes I get, the engagement that I get. And if you are getting 100 views per video and we compare ourselves to these people that are getting, hundreds of thousands of views on every video they put out. If you're getting 100 views in your local community, that's pretty good leverage for your restaurant, right? 100 people, if I could stand in one room and talk to 100 people about my food, I've got a pretty captive good audience, right? And then if I can take that organic social media and then on average I get 100 to 200 views, and then all of a sudden I pop one out and I get 3 to 5,000 views, that tells me as a business owner that for some reason, I might not even know why, because I'm not a creator, I'm a restaurant owner, but for some reason that video resonated with people more because we live in that industry or era, I guess I should say, of interest-based media now, where people are going to see what they're interested in, and for whatever reason that one resonated more with the audience. So those are the videos that you then take and you run some money against, 5 to 10 miles of your front door, so that
Mm-hmm.
you can see content that is already resonating with your audience, right?
For sure.
But I think the biggest thing about it, we talked about it earlier in the podcast, is that nothing in the restaurant industry doesn't go 100 miles an hour. So how do restaurant owners make time to do this and take this all on? Like they're already got a full plate. They're losing visibility. They're not getting the customers in the door that they used to. So how do restaurant owners free up some of their time to do that, do you think?
They leverage the
How do they
people in
make
the
it work?
restaurant.
Maybe not free up their time, but how do they make it work, I
Yeah.
guess I should say.
I think, if everyone knew how to do it, you would have social content creators and they've all got 5 million followers, right? And I think the basis around it is there's no secret science to social media. It's just, are you out there?
Yep.
That's the big thing, right? You hear everybody say that you got to have, oh, it's about your 30, your 3-second hook. It's about this, it's about that. It's, are you posting at the right time that your viewers are watching? Right. If I'm a restaurateur, I don't care about that just to start off. I want to get my stuff out there, get exposed. I want people, even if that 1 30-second post that I put out there of me walking through my kitchen, showing my chef making something, and I post it, and that gets 10 people in the door, was that 30 seconds worth it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely it will, right? Especially if I'm operating on a true anywhere from a 28 to 33% food cost. Of course it is. Absolutely. And I think that's the miss, right? Oh, I'm not seeing the traction. I'm not seeing the traction. Well, you just started. Like anything, you got to give it time to marinate and get things going. Well, you mentioned earlier, I do social content, right? Because it keeps me fresh. And my first realm of videos got literally 50 views, right?
Mhm.
And now all of a sudden, I've got previous videos that I did a year and a half ago when I first started doing this thing that are dinging me on alerts every single way, right? I just put them on there, let them go, and I think every once in a while you're gonna get one that pops. It's
Yep.
just it's part of the process. It happens. And the ones I think that are afraid to start, ask yourself one question. What am I really afraid of? Right?
Mhm.
Am I afraid that I'm not going to keep up with the massive success that this could possibly have for me? So then do it in bite-sized pieces. Do one a week, right? And then go then and move and see what that does. And I think you asked what advice would I have is, don't be afraid to step outside of what's comfortable.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And that's the big thing.
The whole time that you were explaining that, one word kept just triggering in my mind, and that's just consistency, right?
Mm-hmm.
I firmly agree with you that a lot of owners, for whatever reason, just don't start. And whatever reason they're using to not start, I personally believe that always comes back to some form of internal insecurity. No matter what it may be, it's just an insecurity of putting yourself out there, right? And I've also seen very successful restaurant brands who are very successful with social media and never necessarily have to show your face on camera,
Never.
right?
Never.
Your brand identity can be whatever your brand identity is, but there's a big thing that goes along with perceived value of a brand, right?
It's funny you mentioned, you talk about the owner over here, right? And then you talk about the restaurant over here. My favorite restaurants, I don't know who the owners are.
You're right.
Do
You're
you?
absolutely right. Nope.
Right.
Nope.
I don't go there because you or somebody else owns the restaurant. I go there because it's great ambiance. It's a great time. Food is fantastic. Right. I walk out fulfilled. I don't break the bank. That's why I go.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to your point, I've seen some of the best social media campaigns around food that don't show a single person.
Yes. Yeah.
You may see a hand coming in with this. I've seen it. I mean, it could be of the bar, it could be whatever it may be. And if you want to feel a little froggy and get yourself out there and show your face every once in a while, by all means. But some of the best ones I've seen do not show a human element. They show the food.
Yep.
Right. And that's really what restaurant owners get into it for. They get into it for the love and passion for food. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you can start out small by showing your food, whether or not it's pulling a pie out of the oven or it's, assembling a burger and whatever it may be, try it small. What do you got to lose?
Sure. All those same restaurants that you're talking about, guaranteed 110%. Every successful restaurant, when you walk into the kitchen, there are systems in place, right? If an order comes up off that ticket and it's a burger, I know the exact system from A to Z of how that burger gets prepared, plated, how much ketchup, how much mustard, how many pickles, out the window in X amount of time, right? How I handle my payroll, there's a system to that. How I handle my scheduling, there's a system to that. How I greet my guests and seat and give the guest experience. There's always systems to that because there has to be to maintain that consistency. And my goal, and especially with the 86 Opinions podcast, is to get out in front of restaurant owners and just kind of let them know that if you put that same system in place with your marketing, it doesn't have to be a multi-million-dollar production company. Just have a system to it, remain consistent, and understand that's where the word of mouth is happening, just like you said, is in that box that we're recording this on. It's not even
Hmm.
people don't pay attention to billboards hardly anymore. People don't listen to radio anymore because we stream music. And the amount of restaurants that I hear that are just dumping thousands of dollars a month. And I'm not saying radio ads don't work. I would never take that away. There's certain use cases, right? I'm a firm believer. Billboards, certain use cases, but restaurants that are just throwing money into billboards, into radio ads, and then turning around and going, nothing just works. And you look at their social media accounts and it's just like dead. I don't even know what I'm walking into, right? I had a restaurant owner a couple months ago tell me that they were going out of town. Him and his wife were going out of town, and they had already looked up some places on Google, and they already knew where they were going to eat because there were these badass restaurants, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to go there. My wife likes this kind of food. And then I looked at them and I was like, so is that what you need to start doing with your restaurant, is getting out there on social media, on the internet? I'm obviously here because you're not getting visibility. And his exact words right back to me is like, well, we're different. We rely basically on word of mouth and quality of our food. That's the
And you know
same
what though?
thing.
If that's, I look at it though, if that's where the road they want to go, by all means, right? And
Mhm.
I am no way, like I said, no way, shape, or form am I an expert, right?
Sure.
If you want to take that path and that's the route you want to go, I'll support you and applaud you every single one of the way. I'll give you the advice on ideas that could potentially help, right? That's up to
Mhm.
you whether or not you want to take it, right?
Amen to that. Yep. And on that note, let's talk about that, because there is I don't know if I would call it a trend. I don't think it's a trend. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
here to stay. Third party delivery has brought on
Mm-hmm.
this influx of ghost and virtual kitchens into the industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those types of restaurants that are, basically their whole business model is to rely on third party delivery, Grubhub, Uber Eats, DoorDash, to get the food out to the public so they can afford that extra 30% in their overhead, and they're working within the margins that they have. In most of those restaurants, you won't find anywhere on social media, but they make a killing because they're doing it correctly through the third party platforms. What have you seen as good, positive, or anything in between as far as this third party industry delivery coming into the restaurant world? Because this is kind of something that's taken the industry by storm since the pandemic, right?
Well, for sure. And I think the one thing that it kind of really changed the dynamic of, number one, how people dine too. And
Sure.
you know, it's that idea of sitting at a table in a restaurant, yeah, it's a great getaway. People still enjoy it. I enjoy it. I'm sure you enjoy it. But there's also something to be said about sitting down, having a comfortable meal at my own kitchen table that I didn't have to prepare,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't have to clean up the dishes out. It just goes right in the trash can, right? And I think that will never go away. And I think the ones that leverage it the most are going to be the ones that are the most successful. And I think if the pandemic taught any of us that are in this hospitality industry anything, it's, are you prepared for tomorrow? And I think, do you have systems in place that are preparing you for tomorrow? And I think the one thing that I saw the biggest is like, breakfast places are not really built for carryout, right? So are you adapting your menu to make it that you can put something that travels really well and stays hot? And do you have the right systems in place and the right containers and things like that? But the ideas of DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, those things are not going away, right? I wouldn't
Nope,
be
not at
surprised
all.
if they don't pop up. I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon doesn't start doing a, restaurant delivery service if they haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to go away.
It's lucrative. We lead
Hmm.
busy lives, just like we said earlier. We lead busy lives, and I'm willing to pay, not me personally, but I'm saying as a society, we're willing to pay extra for convenience. And we've
Hmm.
proven that time and time again, not just with this food thing, but just through society as a whole in every industry, we will pay a little extra for the convenience, right?
For sure.
And I think that that's an important aspect for restaurant owners to look at. I think one of the things that I see that hurts restaurant owners in that is there are a lot of restaurant owners that get stuck into paying that 30% and not using, again, the right systems that those platforms offer to knock that down a little bit, because you can't take a business that has on average 6% profit margins and then pay somebody 30% to simply deliver your food for you, because you're going negative 24% right there, right? So there's a lot of strategic implementation that you have to do with that. But I agree with you. It's not going away by any means of the word.
The smartest ones the smartest ones that leverage it the most have identified you don't have to turn your whole menu on. You don't have to turn your whole menu on to be available for delivery.
Uh-huh.
Some people think, oh, well, I've got to turn the access to my whole menu. No, start small. Do just your burgers or whatever it may be.
Your fast
I'm not
casual
saying,
items, your fast
yeah,
casual items are where it's
right.
at,
The one,
right?
the ones that travel well, right? Like I mentioned earlier. And I think you either do it that way or you internally deliver. You pay a driver. You have to then pay for insurance. You have to pay for liability insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're now driving, unless you're providing them a vehicle and all that, which you're probably
Mm-hmm.
not going to.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to think about it. If you want to get in the home delivery game, right? I would say on average, most restaurants, the makeup of carryout in today's world, and carryout being that home delivery service, is probably anywhere from that 25 to 35% range of their revenue.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want that extra 30% revenue, by all means, don't do home delivery,
Mm-hmm.
right? My food doesn't travel well. My food isn't meant for takeout. Okay, then don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But don't be upset when the restaurant next door to you is doing it, and you see the Uber drivers constantly picking up food, and you see that they've got a line out the door, and their food is moving, and they're getting more frequent deliveries from their food service vendors. And it's the world in which we live in. If you don't adapt to the landscape, like I mentioned before, the landscape is going to pass you by.
Amen. Amen. And this is something that I used to preach a lot. I would say, 3, 4, 5 years ago, actually, when I was still operating my restaurant, when this third-party delivery and it took kind of the industry by storm very quickly during the pandemic. I had this chance to speak with somebody, and I forget who it was, but the conversation led to the fact of, if you look back in history of how this works, right? Back in the the 60s, the 70s, we had roadside motels, right? The airport industry always had, the airlines all kind of just did their own thing, right? And they would offer discounts. When the internet came out, that kind of wiped out the travel industry. It wiped out mom and pop's hotels on the side of the road, and basically the smalls that weren't able to adapt kind of just dwindled. And you see all these used, washed up roadside motels now that don't equate to anything, right? And what brands actually made it are the brands that then came together and formed groups, like hotel groups, right? Like Choice Rewards, and you might have like 8 or 9 to 10 different brands that you can get Choice Rewards for, right? So I've always had this thing in my head, and I'm sure it's happening out there. This isn't just a $1 million idea that Doug thought of. I'm sure it's already happening. Restaurants that could band together as a restaurant group in a local area and use one specific delivery service to that restaurant group, right? Because what hurt the travel industry when the internet came along is that everybody now started going to Travelocity, Kayak, Expedia, because those internet systems figured out how to always give the best prices. Businesses can't survive giving everybody the best price every single time,
No.
and putting everything on discount and everything on sale, right? So by banding together as a group, they were able to cut that cost down. So if you had a restaurant group that banded together and even started their own group delivery drivers that just delivered for those 10 restaurants in the local area, because the biggest thing is that we've now figured out a way to go on the internet and get a hot, ready, fresh hamburger to your door in 10 or 15 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same exact thing in my eyes that took that travel industry by storm. They just never knew how to get in front of the food industry yet, and they figured it out.
Well, the food industry is a little bit unique in
Sure.
that aspect, right? Most of that is really reserved for your national account concepts, if you will, right? And the reason I say it that way is because if you and I both own restaurants, what's important to me is not necessarily important to you on a product standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
My number one mover may involve an ingredient that takes up 10% of my P&L on my receivables, or my payables, but it doesn't even affect one blip for you.
Mm-hmm.
And where that kind of becomes a headache is, where do you allow it for the vendors? I mean, the vendors still have to make their money. Let's just, I mean, because that's how they service you, right? I mean,
Yep.
just like a restaurant, no restaurant is ever going to make it by constantly giving away the farm. Neither is a restaurant, you know. And I think the way in which that operates is, what are the market trends that need to stay in that market, right? High market on ground beef. There's a lot of burger joints, right? What can the market withhold and hang on to, if you want a price standpoint, on that price of ground beef? And you know, are we buying it right? Are we selling it right? Are we selling the right item? Those are all really big questions that come from a lot of Q&A that we do on my end with restaurant owners, right? What can you hold on to? What works for you? What doesn't work? Have you tried this? Have you been exposed to this item? Have you been exposed to this category? Allowing the restaurant owners in a certain geography to be exposed to the same things, because the last thing you want to have is, hey, what do you mean you didn't tell me about that? I heard from the guys down the street that you were talking to them about that. I need to know about that too. And, you know, staying consistent in messaging with us and how we go to market with business is key, right? We don't hold on to anything that's, you know, that's saying market trends are proprietary to only Doug. I'm only giving that to Doug. I'm not giving that to anybody else.
Sure.
We need to make sure that we're exposing as much as we can and being as fair and marketable as we can, I think, is where the restaurant food service distribution side is there. It's not to say that there aren't anomalies in certain areas, right? But I think for the idea of purchasing product, every restaurant is going to have a different niche of what works, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could have two diners side by side and they blow through a bunch of potatoes for hash browns. One owner's going to swear up and down that he's got to have the number 2 Idaho potatoes, and the other guy's going to say, I only use reds, right?
Yep.
How do you manage that, right? On a group buying situation, you necessarily can't, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's where those anomalies kind of are a little bit difficult to manage.
For sure. For sure. Going along with that, you talk about, you know, this person uses res, this person uses that. I'm a firm believer that if you have a restaurant, especially a fast, not just especially, any restaurant, fast casual, sit down, dine in, takeout, whatever it may be, I'm a firm believer that you should have one thing on your menu, one thing that you do extremely, extremely well that I cannot get anywhere else. Right. I know that if I'm going to get this, I'm going to Jason Davis's Plated Up. Right. Because he's going to be the one that has it. So thinking back to all the restaurants you've visited and where you've been, what one dish in what one restaurant? Let's give them a shout out. What stands out to you?
Geez, that's a tough one, man.
It is a tough one.
You know, I'm gonna go back a little bit of ways. They're no longer there anymore. It was in Frederick, Maryland. I'm a sucker, Doug, for a good burger, right? It doesn't, I mean, it could be a triple stack, double stack. I don't care, but I don't want the basic cheeseburger, right? Throw me some toppings. Make me make a mess on myself with the burger, right?
Yeah,
And, you know, it all comes down to several different things. How's the bun? How's the roll, right? How's the grind of the burger? Is it too greasy? What's the fat content? What type of cheese are you using? You just throwing slices American on there? Are you throwing something like a nice spreadable brie or Gruyere? Or what are you doing? And there was a place in Frederick, Maryland called Barley and Hops.
I've
And
heard of
Barley
it.
and Hops.
I've heard of
Barley
that.
and Hops had one of the best burgers that I've ever had. And I would literally, it was one of my accounts.
Sure.
And he was a big account. He would brew his own beer. So he would buy his barley from a separate vendor. But then he would buy everything else between me and another vendor. And because he was so big, I would have to go in 3 times a week to make sure that he's buying what he says he's buying from me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Protect my business as a food service distributor.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, I would go in around lunchtime just so I could sit and get a burger 3 times a week from him.
Strategically
Right? I mean,
planned your meeting, right?
Don't threaten me with a good time,
Yeah.
right? You know, but I would say, you know, there's a couple places that I'm a big pizza fan, right? You know, I live in South Jersey, and there's a lot of different pizza spots, right? It's hard to say where is a good pizza shop.
What's your
right?
favorite style of pizza then? Chicago, Detroit,
No, I'm a thin crust Neapolitan, man. I
thin
love
crust
it,
Neapolitan.
right? I love the different varieties of flavoring, right? I'm classic pizza with pepperoni and cheese. That's great. But, you know, give me a nice one that's got some prosciutto and a little bit of balsamic glaze with some fig and arugula. And that to me, there's nothing wrong with classics, but I love variations.
Amen. Have you ever been to Hash House a Go-Go?
I have not.
Heard of it?
I have.
Okay. I'm a chicken and waffle guy, man.
Yeah.
I'm a fanatic. I'm a chicken and waffle connoisseur. If I go somewhere and they got chicken and waffles, I'm getting it just to try it. And
I'm that
hash
way with short rib. Short
short
rib for
rib.
me.
Okay. Hash House A Go Go has they call it an Andes sage crusted chicken and waffle. And man, if you're ever out in a place that has a Hash House A Go Go location, highly, highly recommend it. And
I'll
again,
put it on
one
the
of those
market.
things, it's that thing too, when they walk it through the restaurant, I don't care what you ordered, I don't care where you're sitting, I don't care what you're doing. When they walk that chicken and waffles through the restaurant, everybody's stopping and looking to see what the hell it is. Because I mean, it's just presentation. It's got a big sage stick sticking out the top of it.
Yeah.
It's insane. So, is there anything, Jason, that I know we've talked previously, and I always appreciate our in-depth conversations. You're a humble man, and you don't want to be classified as an expert, but you're a very knowledgeable man in the industry. So, is there anything that you feel that you think could help restaurant owners that we haven't necessarily discussed so far yet?
I think it's a two-word question, right? Why not?
Why not? Why not? I like that.
That that can be applied in so many different things, right? I'm not doing social media. Why not?
Yep.
Right? I'm not adjusting my menu. Why not?
Yep.
Right? I think if you take that philosophy, why not? You're always then reaching for the next thing. Don't be afraid to take chances. Some of the most creative chefs got to where they are because they took a chance on a recipe.
Hmm.
And you know what? They fell. We've all fallen throughout the way. It's you pick yourself up and you do something else with it, right? And I think if you ask yourself that question, why not? Whether or not it's, for me, social media was a big one, right? Not to go too down far the rabbit hole, but I fought the social media trend on doing private content like I do
Hmm.
for a very long time. It took me going on vacation July of 2024. It was another couple, my wife and I, we went to the Outer Banks and it was 4th of July weekend. And long and short of it, we couldn't get into a restaurant. I was the only one that really cooked. Went to the local grocery store and I cooked up some burgers. And my guy that was with us, he had a pretty decent following on YouTube and he posted it and it blew up. I'm like, what is this? Right? I'm
Hmm.
not getting into this. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for
Yeah.
this. A year and a half later, there's a lot of other creators out there bigger than me by far, but
Sure.
I've been pretty successful with it. I mean, I'm close to probably across all platforms, close to about 50,000. I've had some pretty big winners and I took a step back when he kept pushing me about the social media. I asked myself, why not? What do I have to
Why
lose?
not? I love that.
Right.
I love that.
And I think if a restaurant owner lives that philosophy, why not? You're always going to be pushing yourself to something new.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I'm not trying that. I'm not trying the smash burger trend. Why not? Well, I'm a fine dine restaurant. Okay. You can't make a fine dine smash burger.
Yep. Yep, you're absolutely right. I love you sharing that story for another reason also is because I'm going to take it back to what I said earlier about virality, and that restaurants chase virality. A lot of people chase virality, right? And
Hmm.
don't get me wrong, virality is going to bring exposure. Virality is going to bring some visibility. Virality is going to bring and it's going to bring some business. But if you don't take that virality of how you explain it and take a step back and say, okay, now that this happened, how do I maintain this momentum and grow off of what I just experienced? That virality for a restaurant is nothing more than a flash in the pan. So being able to have that follow up and develop that plan after you get exposed to that is, in my opinion, so much more important than the actual viral moment that you had.
Hmm.
And I think that story is just a very, very encompassing of how that happens in your own personal experience, right? And you've done an
Yeah.
amazing job with it, man. I've
I
been
appreciate it.
following you
Thank you.
on all your socials for, gosh, it's been probably most of your journey then. It's been a good year,
Yeah.
year and a half
I
that we've
think you
had.
were within my first like maybe 200, 300 followers on
Yeah,
TikTok, right?
yeah. Uh,
I
and
think
your
there's
your
one other
content.
thing. Go ahead, Doug. I'm sorry.
So I didn't mean to cut you off. And I just wanted to say,
No,
because
no.
this is an accolade to you, you didn't just go with the good enough. Your content continuously gets better, right? And that's what the
Thank you, man.
game's
I
all about.
appreciate that.
That's what the game's all about.
There's a couple of big time creators that I follow, and they're more than just creators. They're hella cooks, right? And
Sure.
I try to take a couple tips here and there, and like, oh, look at what he did. How do I do that? Let me position my light different, or just even sometimes the way I place a knife on how I cut something. Before it was just like, right.
Yep.
Now it's
Yep.
like, okay, how does it look on the camera? right? There's a true art between doing that, and there's some guys that have mastered it. I still got a long way to go, man. Right? I have features
Yep.
within my digital camera that I don't even know what the hell they mean. Right?
And you and me both.
I think, I'll leave you with this. I think the one thing for me, if you were to ask me the thing that made the most impact, whether or not it's in my culinary career, my sales career, my personal life, it was a statement that I had a chef that, he was an old school guy, but his techniques were old school, but his cuisine was new school. Right. And he used to say that the guys made the windshield bigger than the rear view mirror for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that you got to be looking forward, but that rear view mirror is there so you always remember where you came from.
Amen.
Right? If you
Amen.
focus too much in that rearview mirror, you're going to miss the turn ahead.
Yep.
Right? And I think those words have always stuck with me as
Mm-hmm.
to what am I looking at forward, and am I making sure that I'm learning from my experiences behind me so I don't take the same steps that I did forward.
Yeah.
And again, not perfect here by no way, shape, or form. A lot of improvement I can do on my end. Not an expert on anything. It's just some of my life experience, and I hope sharing it with you and it inspires some people, and they can get better at what they do too.
Absolutely, brother. I can tell you that you absolutely inspire me every time I see your content.
I appreciate
And
that.
I think that looking out the front windshield versus the rear view mirror is like the most amazing analogy as we kind of wrap up this podcast. And it's very important because it's very easy when you're stuck in the daily grind and you've got the mental stress and the mental overload. We always feel like that our world is just like, it's everything, right? I was talking to a restaurant owner last week that was like, I had some bad employees. I mean, literally a coffee shop that she had employees that were putting chemicals in the drinks when they were putting them out because they kind of just took on this mutiny against the owner. And it lasted for a day or two before she started getting comments about it and realizing what was going on. And, and she, unfortunately, she felt like this was the whole community was just against her now. And, I told her, I said, I've researched your business for the last 3 or 4 days before I came here. I didn't just come here off of just seeing that you were here. I researched social media. I looked at everything. I see nothing of that. Right. So it's important that restaurant owners realize that windshield looking forward is so much bigger. I love that analogy and it fits in so many different stories. So on that note, give yourself a shout out, man. Let people know where they can find you on all your social media platforms and let them know what you said Hispanic kind of culture foods. That was your favorite thing to cook. So let them know
Yep.
what video they need to go watch to see your favorite video that you have out there. Where do they see it at?
My favorite video. Well, first off, where you see me on TikTok, I'm known as Plate It Up. So you can search for Plate It Up with Jason, and that'll show up on all platforms, right? I'd have to say the favorite thing I ever made, I literally just made Sunday.
Okay.
It's a shout out to the brand, right? I had some Dave's hot chicken left over, and I'm like, I'm not going to just throw it in the air fryer. Let me do something different. I had some 3-day fermenting dough that I had made for pizza, and I have a nice outside solo stove pizza oven. I was like, I'm going to make a pizza with it. So I incorporated a buffalo sauce, some spicy barbecue sauce, chopped up those chicken strips, threw on the pickles and the onions and some jalapeno. And I'm telling you, I think that whole pizza, and
That was it.
it was at least a 14-inch pizza. I think my wife and I finished it off in like 10 minutes.
Hell yeah. So Dave's Hot Chicken, if you're listening, hit up my man Jason and
Yeah,
let's
man.
talk about some menu development, right?
There you go. All day.
All right, brother. So you're on TikTok. Are you on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube?
I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, I'm on YouTube. Again, search Plate It Up with Jason. It'll show up. So, and then you go from there.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for your time again. It's always
man,
a
thank you
pleasure
for
to
having
talk
me.
with you. And we like to 86 opinions with restaurant owners. So thank you for helping us spread that message.
Hey, man, we all have our own opinions. Whether you choose to go with them or not, that's up to you.
Amen.